Hey, we're here and we're chatting with Mr. Bill Rice, who's a seasoned entrepreneur. He's a sales strategist and a marketing expert with over 20 years of experience building and scaling lead generation systems for FinTech and leading organizations. And he had served as a U.S. Air Force officer, leading counter-espionage operations and building information warfare systems. But now that has led to a powerful foundation for a strategic approach to growth and competitive positioning, which involves AI and all these things that we do to get an agency built and fueled and working great with the teams and the people. So Bill is here from BillRiceStrategy.com to tell us how it's done, to set us right, to tell us what to avoid, and make sure that we have some fun, get fulfilled, grow a company, all these other things that we want to do. So, Mr. Bill, glad to be speaking with you.
Hey, I appreciate the time to be on here with you and your audience, Robert. Thanks for having me.
And thanks for being here. And so I did my best as far as introducing you and hyping you up, but what did I leave out? What's your current focus and passion?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now, like I said in the bio, been doing this for 20 plus years, been doing it longer as just kind of a career. And so I'm at kind of the phase where I'm enjoying doing more strategy work. I'm enjoying talking to agency owners, entrepreneurs, and helping them kind of get to a level and a phase that I've been able to achieve. And so I love to just kind of share back to the audience. I do believe agency is one of those interesting markets where it's so sort of fractured and fragmented that there is lots of opportunities for all of us. And so I like to share openly. I'll give you my exact playbook. And I've never run in or felt sort of competitively disadvantaged by sharing. So that's really what's been passionate for me, is just to open up and be more open than a lot of agency owners are. Sometimes we try to hold things tight to our vest, and I just really enjoyed sharing and teaching more.
Yeah, and I love that concept that you're here to teach some stuff. You're here to just lay it out and say how it's done, because there's so much abundance out there, right? There's so many people that can find us on the YouTubes and the podcast that what's the point in being trying to put up this facade, right? Just say how it is. Life is too short. And so in spirit of that whole term agency, it's intimidating, right? And I wonder if it means 3 or 4 different things to different people. And so when someone tells me they have an agency, I think okay, they specialize in something, right? They're like a SEO or a PPC agency, and then they probably have 70 clients and 18 employees on staff, and there's all this client work coming in and all these specialists with the output. But that's just kind of the going back to basics idea that I get when someone says agency. But what do you think as far as what your agency is? How would you describe it?
Yeah, I think you nailed the mean there for sure in all of those kind of characterizations. I think probably I'm a big proponent of this. Whenever we're talking about any sort of concept, it's kind of take it down to its most fundamental aspect. And so if you just look at the word agency, I really like to embrace that, because I think a lot of agency owners, especially those that are less experienced, don't really embrace the terminology, at face value, which is meaning that I'm trying to provide a service as an agent of my client. So I'm trying to give them something that is advantaging them, growing an asset, giving them a capability. I'm doing it on behalf of them. So I'm not necessarily sort of keeping anything for myself. It's truly to kind of give that capability to them. And then, to your point, I think the more nuance, or what makes that valuable, is being able to figure out what that delivery, what that value proposition is, and do it in such a way that it is unique, which probably means it needs to be focused to who you're serving. So whenever you're doing something as an agent of a business, you usually not only need to know the services that you're delivering very well and have a skill set, PPC, SEO, whatever, lead generation in our case, but you should also have, and this is where focus comes into play, you need to have a deep understanding of the business, what they do, because you're stepping in there and you're acting within their business as a part of that business, because you're an agent of them. So I think it's really important, and the best agencies are ones that probably have picked a niche or category or an industry, and they have a deep business knowledge in that category, in addition to just the marketing component.
Very cool. Well, this is exciting to think about as far as getting back to that basic terminology and this idea that if someone needs Bill Rice strategy for their lead generation, they say, "Oh my gosh, where has this guy Bill been all my life?" And then if you have an understanding of their business, this concept of, man, has Bill and his team been reading my diary? They're so tuned into what our problems and our fears and frustrations are. And so, but that's just a guess on my part. So if someone comes to you, if they come to Bill Rice Strategy, what is their problem? Where are they stuck? How do you help?
Yeah, I think a lot of times in that particular agency, and I've had a couple and done sort of different facets of that. But in the context of Bill Rice Strategy and that agency, generally they're coming to us in the category of FinTech. So they're trying to bring something new or change the way that we're doing financial services, and they're probably doing it with technology. And really, the capability we bring is helping them go to market with that. And the difficulty and why I kind of like that space is you are trying to go to the market and convince them to change the way that they're doing business and probably have for a very long time. And financial services is a slow ship to turn for sure. But there is, because of that, there's lots of inefficiencies, there's lots of opportunity to be gained, and so that's where we kind of step in as we help with the strategy, and we've seen that. So again, the playbook, and this is what makes it easier for us than maybe a new organization. The playbook to go to marketing with those type of organizations. We've tested and we've got a tried and true approach to doing that because we know we're going into a market, which is fairly easy to see who those clients are because they're already doing something, and they've established a process, and we need to show them that there's a better way to do that. And so we need to do that, and we have obviously we use a variety of different channels, from content to social media, to paid channels, to really, one, get in front of them, and two, start to introduce them to sort of a newer or better way to do something.
Well, very cool. And I've been trying to figure out for a few years of like why I like the agency guys a lot. And it seems like that they kind of they're strong on these definitions, like you're saying here. And they say like, oh yeah, like we know what the labels are, what the tools in the toolbox, right? A fintech company needs lead generation, and we say, hey, well, we'll do this with SEO and with the content. And so to help us like even further better understand what it is that you do, like fintech, I don't even not even sure what I understand what that means. Like you hear a lot about like martech, like marketing tech, and fintech. My brain says okay, financial tech, but I have no idea. I'm like, is that like a bank or something? And so
Yeah.
like, what is a fintech company? And then as far as where their position is, like, have they tried anything? Or are they stuck? Are they starting from scratch? Like, where are these fintech companies at when they come to you?
Yeah, I think a lot of, so in the world of financial technology, so generally they're taking some sort of, in our case even more specifically, a lot of times they're taking some lending process, maybe it's mortgage, maybe it's home equity, and they've leveraged technology to do some of what is, again, an old process. Maybe it's underwriting, which means they're taking all the information, the consumer, their credit report, their bank statements, and they're looking through all of that to see whether or not they have the capability to repay. Well, now with the introduction of AI and a lot of those that data being as easy as logging in and providing it electronically and exchanging that and then evaluating it again with computer systems. So in going to market with those systems, the folks are generally offsetting a manual process or a process that has been sort of approved. And there's this expectation that we have some experts looking and evaluating these loan scenarios and making qualifications. Now we can do that with computers. That seems a little bit like, I don't understand that. Like, do I trust the computer? So those sorts of things. So for us, kind of going into that space, is we're often trying to, one, show you, hey, there's a higher ROI, and this is what most people think about. Oh, there's a higher ROI way to do this. There's a more efficient way to do this. It delivers a cleaner and smoother consumer experience. But what we like to do in these things, particularly with these things that are going to require trust to change your process, is we like to actually humanize it a little bit. So coming out with the founder or the executives and bringing them forward, making them the face of the brand, and building content from video to written content to things like podcasts and webinars, really showcasing why they think that there's a better way to do it, and starting to build that human trust that helps all of the sales happen easier. Because if we can get the executives or we can get the founder out in front of the market, sort of evangelizing the new concept, then when those sales teams reach out, which is pretty traditional in B2B, that's kind of the marketing and sales is sort of blended. When they start to reach out, people have heard the kind of the higher level conversation and like, oh yeah, I should be checking that out because we've gotten the founder out in front of it, or the key executives out in front of it. And so just to be like very specific, that's the things that kind of move the market, and get people to think about a different way of doing things, particularly in fintech.
And that's great. And it's definitely something that we need to hear about when AI is taking off. And, ever since SEO and content became a thing, there's always been this drive to say, like, let me crank out all this, the spam, right? Let me crank out 1,000 articles about this. With back then it was article spinners, and now ChatGPT can make anything. But you're saying, well, that's all noise. That's all, garbage. But we need to like humanize it and make these kind of higher level conversations and make the videos. And I love that evangelizing idea of like, let's make people like excited about what this company does. And where do you see people falling short with this? Like, where are the struggles? Is there pushback with your ideas, or do they kind of fight you as far as what needs to be talked about? Like, where are the difficulties in making this happen?
Yeah, I think right now we're kind of in this really interesting moment. I love these moments in history where we're kind of like in a transformational sort of scenario, right? AI's come into the community, and into the landscape of marketing, and we have to figure out like what that means, right? So a lot of what's happening, I think, is you either get kind of two interpretations of the market, right? So when we're talking to clients or we're trying to build campaigns, one interpretation is I should just be able to dip into AI and it should do my homework for me, which is the way I like to characterize it. And that is going to give you a disastrous solution, right? Because it will essentially gobble up everything, and it will give you a broad, and a really effective characterization of whatever is available to it. But that doesn't necessarily create a compelling campaign, right? It is putting the human in the system. So we're big fans of AI. We use it alongside of all of our workflows. We use it as the ability to increase capacity, to increase speed, and those sorts of things. But the true advantage is putting creativity into the system, because what the LLMs don't have, and this is why we like to get the founders and the executives directly involved in the marketing, they don't have the experience. They don't have the dynamics of like why I had this vision for doing something different. So all of that personal component, being able to introduce that into the content, the LLMs and ChatGPTs of the world will gobble that stuff up because it's filling gaps, that is unique, that is experiential, and those sorts of things. And so, there's one is people are just trying to get it to do their homework, and then the second is they're over indexing on trying to, and we see this in SEO and PPC, like kind of our first reaction is like, how do we game the system? And what we're seeing is some of our oldest SEO content, some of our sort of tried and true PPC, like those things are showing up in the LLMs because it is good content. It has the element of story to it. It has some unique angle or experience. And we're showing, without even trying, that stuff is being gobbled up and it's showing up in these ChatGPT inquiries. And just the surface area for just the classic inquiry, whether it's a search engine or ChatGPT, is just increased exponentially because it's coming across all of these LLMs. It's still coming through search. So all that's to say, kind of the basics, and quality, creativity, and that human in the middle. That's what's kind of winning, even in AI.
Well, I love the human in the middle, and like the for some reason the what's going on in my imagination is this idea of leapfrogging, right? Like you want to make the content and you say, hey, let me use ChatGPT to like get some ideas and get all that surface area. Ooh, this gets my attention. Let's have it build something. Well, let's change this and that. Let's kind of guide it. And I think that's a great recipe to getting to a finished point faster versus there's like this worry of like we keep saying like, well, it generates all the stuff no one really cares about, doesn't really make sense. But it's like if you work together with it, that's what we've been looking for since the beginning, right? This sidekick, this buddy, this
Yep.
assistant, this intern that kind of gets us there to get all this content created. And so you provide this very helpful service to these fintech clients who they need the content, they need the videos, they need the lead gen, they need the SEO, they need the reach. And you said before we started recording that you really fuel agencies, you really like grow these companies, and that's what we maybe need some advice with, because a lot of people out there, they're maybe focused on the wrong things or like holding themselves back, self-sabotaging. So is there any area where like you had to transform? Like have you struggled growing this company, and did you have to maybe like pivot or rethink at some point?
Yeah, I think early on. So we certainly pivoted. So I own two different agencies. One in particular, we did a really dynamic pivot from software company to marketing agency. Again, focused on lead generation. The second agency, which is Bill Rice Strategy, I've been more refined. Like I've learned, so I kind of went straight into a niche that I understood, and I already had kind of an understanding of the systems that we made. I think for most agency owners, the normal journey and the journey that I've learned to avoid is we kind of go in there first and we try to take the shortcut. We try to figure out like, okay, how can I get business in sort of the easiest, simplest way, least amount of investment, least amount of sort of um, effort, right, in building content or doing sales outreach and those sorts of things. And so I learned you need to set that foundation. So that initial thing is we need to get out there and we need to talk to the market. That's content. We need to have sales systems. Most agencies are grown out of creatives. I had the advantage of growing out of a business and sales development sort of background. So you need that outreach. No one's going to understand, discover, or know about your service or your product unless you engage them. So you do need to do outreach, whether that's, and usually it's a component of these. It's publishing content. It's putting things into LinkedIn. It's reaching out in LinkedIn. It's using the kind of the old fashioned tried and true email. One thing that probably doesn't work anymore is the phone call. Like we used to make outbound phone calls. Now everybody has a cell phone. I don't know many companies like you used to give you a phone on your desk. Like there's no way to directly call into a company anymore, right? It's all a system of individuals. So some of this stuff looks a little more B2C than B2B now. And so I think that's really the most important component is like, what am I foundationally creating some surface area? That's the content. I'm reaching out to tell people about it. And then when I tell them about it, what are they going to do? They're going to kind of check me out. Even as an individual sales contributor in a larger operation, as we're scaling, I think it's important for individual salespeople to create some surface area so that when people look out, they're like, oh, it would be valuable to talk to that person. Yeah, maybe he's an SDR. Too often we just think of him as a cog in the wheel. But if you create a little bit of personal brand there, that outreach is going to get so much more response. So I think those are a couple things to really focus on if you're looking to scale, any of those systems, businesses, marketing, and sales. It's just again make a little bit of investment to build some awareness, some surface area for people to check you out and know who you are and think that it would be valuable to have a conversation with you.
And this is all great. You have a wonderful series of ideas here, and some of it might be counterintuitive, especially if it requires maybe unlearning some things from when you were younger or childhood, right? Your parents told you not to talk to strangers. You have to have these conversations. You were told to not brag about yourself. Well, you have to build a personal brand. And then this whole, like, you and I keep on talking about like definitions, terminology, this idea of content. I think it took me many years to unlearn this idea of like used to think of content as like, oh, you write a new blog post, right? Write a new article. But then what you and me are doing here is content, right? We're on a podcast, we're recording stuff, we'll get some good usage out of it. And then when you do that outbound, you have those conversations with people. Then like you might send them some kind of output blog post you create that speaks to their needs, but then the blog post then can help you with the sales conversation. So it's just interesting, fascinating, hurts your brain in a good way to think about how it all might connect and interrelate. And so, speaking to that, we want to talk you up, and we want to show how you can help make a change in some of these other organizations that you help. And so, as far as like a success story or a case study, do you have something to share with us as far as the magic that your agency performs?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's the most interesting, for our agency and pushing those forward is a lot of times we're working at zero to traction, right? And so to be able to quickly get folks out there and exposed to their marketplace and get those initial inbound inquiries, we've had. Again, most of our clients, we're taking them from that early version to somewhere in that 100 and depending on the product, 1,000 sort of first clients. And so that is a pretty repeatable process. So when we're taking these companies, we're getting them into viability. We're getting them into a zone where they can acquire funding, or they have enough funding to be able to sustain the organization and kind of go to the next level. And so that's a pretty typical trajectory where we start with a founder who has a product, maybe a co-founder, and then we get them those initial clients, and then from there they can scale, they can raise money and that sort of thing. So that's a pretty typical case study for us, is to take that initial idea, get it into the market, get them those first 100 customers, and we do that in a pretty repeatable way.
And that's great to hear, because there's always this fear of the content will just be out there just because, right? Just to create a buzz, right? You make the LinkedIn post, you make the blog post, you make the videos. Okay, well, great. What's the point of that? And so, is my understanding here that then that's where the lead gen part comes in, and you get those inquiries and you get actual people, and you kind of like warm them up and put them through your funnel, so that way they turn into clients. It's not just content for the sake of it. It's for the purpose of getting, people to use your services.
Yeah, and that's where it's really important to build a bit of that personal brand. So again, the context can be different. If we're dealing with an individual founder versus an organization of executives, a lot of times these early stage companies are going to go through a pivot. So being able to create content, like you said, get them on podcasts, get them doing a webinar, get them doing some video that goes out into LinkedIn, or publishing. You said kind of the classic, which it was, the blog post. Not to totally poo-poo blog posts, but like I'd much rather you post something on LinkedIn, so that when you do that email outreach, they're going to look at LinkedIn, they're going to see your profile, they're going to see all of your content right there. They don't have to go find your blog, right? Or you don't have to wait for your blog to rank so that they get you. So the importance of all of that is being able to create, like you said, all those different varieties of content in such a way that, one, as you do it, it helps you refine and tighten your value proposition and your messaging and your positioning. But the other thing is, most likely, you're going to go through a pivot. So it also gives you the scaffolding to have enough of an audience to get some feedback, even if they're not clients yet, get some feedback and figure out like maybe where we need to skate to go where the puck is headed, right? And so that's also another characterization. Like, too often, I think with agencies are like, hey, invest in some content. I'm gonna ghostwrite a bunch of blog posts for you, and it's gonna be a sunk cost. Content should never be a sunk cost. It should be out there, and it should allow you to have maximum flexibility and optionality to go in different directions, because you're sort of building and tightening that message, figuring out where you need to go, and it gives you a lot of optionality versus just investing in a blog post. It either ranks or it doesn't. Money spent probably has like one focus. Anyway, again, that content needs to be rich and human, so that it gives you, again, maximum optionality, and it continues to return even if you go in a different direction.
Well, very cool. Well, these are some amazing insights you have here, Mr. Bill, especially this one of, if I hear someone's name or I'm looking into someone, right? It's like, okay, Bill Rice, who's that? You're right. I do go to LinkedIn, and maybe I'll go to YouTube, or maybe I'll go to their website, but that's more secondary, right? Because like if I go to a YouTube or website, I'm like, is this really the person? Usually on someone's LinkedIn, I see their picture, I see their company name, their location. I'm like, okay, I can tell in a couple of seconds if this is the right person. And then I'm looking at what's the recent content. And it's like, it was the last post 2 months ago, then he's out immediately. But then if like on that feed, like I see a couple of videos, a couple of posts, and even without clicking, just from the little preview, I'm like, okay, like you get make a judgment just from that right away. And so and I like how you're saying of this idea of build the audience, get the momentum, so that way when it does inevitably come time to pivot, to change the niche slightly or change the content, then you already have that audience. Because man, it sure is discouraging to spend a lot of time on something and like rebrand or reconfigure, and no one's still liking or commenting or watching or inquiring. So you're like, well, hey, it's never a waste. You make the content, you build the audience, and then when you say, all right, based on the sort of feedback I'm seeing, and it's time to pivot to some other kind of space, then they can take those people with us. But it's so exciting to think about, but also overwhelming at the same time when you think about all the possible ways to go wrong, the thinking involved, the work that's ahead. But it can help so much to have a team like yours to say, hey, if you're in the fintech space, we know you, we understand you, we've done all these things, and we're excited for you, maybe even more excited than you are about what can be accomplished. So if someone says, all right, I've got like 32 and a half ideas from Mr. Bill Rice about content, about personal branding, but I want to have a conversation to kind of like capture the lightning in the bottle and to get get an actual strategy, a plan in place. What's the next step here? How can someone find you and reach out?
Yeah. So BillRiceStrategy.com. You can get on there. It's really easy to schedule an initial discovery strategy session. We'll kind of talk through, give a lot of value on that first call because we are in a discovery process. We're trying to kind of learn your business, where you're at, and then depending on where you are at and maybe what success or what you're starting with, we always like to look at the raw materials and the assets that you have available and figure out what we leverage, because the actual service we deliver, because we're an agency, right? It may be a little bit different. We have that flexibility to take you from where you are, leverage whatever assets you have or raw materials, kind of get you to that next level. So that's an obvious one. If you want to lurk a little bit, you're probably going to go to LinkedIn, and there's a lot of content there. And so I give direct content. There's video. If you search for Bill Rice, I've been on LinkedIn for a long time, so you're probably going to find me. But happy to have conversations, direct messages there as well. Like I said, lots of content. And then to kind of what you said there, people go to LinkedIn. I also like to leave a lot of breadcrumbs, right? So I have a YouTube channel, I have a newsletter. A lot of that works together. And so if you really want to, if you're interested, particularly in what I'm saying, hopping on that newsletter is going to give you full visibility to all that. And those breadcrumbs are on LinkedIn, or you can go directly to myexecutivebrief.com, because to a lot of what we're talking about is just trying to figure out like what you should be doing or what the trend is really important. And so that's where my executive brief helps to kind of give you a curated list of what you should be focused on.
Very cool. And that's a very untapped part about LinkedIn. A lot of people don't realize that the people that are seriously posting and posting consistently, they have these newsletters. And so if you're not 100% LinkedIn literate, you go to someone's LinkedIn page and they have their post, but you can click on the more button and go to and see if they have a newsletter, and just, one click subscribe that. And I don't know about you, Bill, but sometimes I'm just like really quickly like listening to a podcast, getting to the next thing. And if you hear about Bill Rice, and he has this excellent newsletter called Selling Attention, you can just go and click and subscribe. And that way, the next time you're on LinkedIn, you see some more of these newsletter posts and you say, oh, yeah, I wanted to look into Bill, but I just didn't have 2 seconds back then. I had half a second. So I clicked subscribe and I came back later when he had more to say. And so that's linkedin.com/in/Bill Rice. Bill Rice is a founder and chief revenue officer with strategic advisory and lead generation. He designs and grows inbound lead generation strategies. So that's Bill Rice on LinkedIn. And then Bill said myexecutivebrief.com. But what we really want you to go to is billricestrategy.com, because that team works with your company to build a demand generation strategy, leveraging your current business stage, market positioning, and team. They'll present that strategy and assist the team with rapid implementation to get those sales leads flowing quickly. And you can, like you said, from BillRiceStrategy.com, you can jump over to the excellent YouTube channel. I just subscribed there as well. You can jump to the LinkedIn and you can get on that calendar. That way, if you say, we've been kind of wanting more and stuck with our current resources, we need better resources, we'll have that conversation at BillRiceStrategy.com. And before I let you go, Mr. Bill, it's time for the scary part of the show where I try to put you on the spot. I ask for a quote or lesson that has served you that you can pass on to us. So, what do you have for a quote or lesson?
Yeah, one of my favorites, and I don't know who to attribute it to, but I've heard it and said it for years. That's hard now, easy later, easy now, hard later. So I think too often we're looking for the shortcut and sort of the easy button, but invariably that'll just make things tougher. So like do the hard work now, invest in that initial content, get yourself out there, do the scary thing, and then later all of that benefit will make your life so much easier, both in personal and business.
I love it. Yeah, you're right. Life and business advice. Do the scary thing. Hard now, easy later. And consider that as you go to BillRiceStrategy.com. Lurk around, read the page, get that call scheduled. And Mr. Bill Rice and his team are excited and looking forward to speaking with you, especially if you're a FinTech company looking to get this lead gen problem figured out. BillRiceStrategy.com. Mr. Bill Rice, wonderful speaking with you.
Hey, it's been a pleasure, Robert. Thanks for having me.